Hi, I'm Mark Sleboda, and this is The Real Politick. In religious terms, Ukraine is largely an Eastern Orthodox nation, just like Russia. Close to 70% of the population currently identifies as Orthodox Christian. For over 1,000 years, a common Orthodox Christian religion and church united the peoples of what are today the separate states of Ukraine, Russia, and Belarus, united them in faith and culture. Since the 14th century, the nominal ecclesiastic patriarch of that common Orthodox faith was located in Moscow. For most of that time, the peoples were united politically as well. But as that political unity was dissolved with the Soviet Union in 1991, schisms started to creep into the common faith as well. But the divisions were not canonical or doctrinal, just church politics and competing conceptions of Ukrainian national identity. These divisions, however, only reached a crescendo and crisis point following the openly US-backed Maidan Putsch in Ukraine in 2014. The ruling elites of the collective West have long regarded the Orthodox faith, and particularly the Russian Orthodox Church, as a threat to their domination of Eastern Europe, all the way back from the schism in the 11th century to today. An endless sea of Western expert articles and media reports rant on about the threat of the church and how the Russian government weaponizes it as an instrument of soft power, much as Hollywood serves as a weaponized instrument of US soft power. However, there's always been a general understanding that due to the basic right to freedom of religion, that this soft power is not something that should be politically challenged or restricted. I mean, how often do you hear in the media about the state of Israel weaponizing the Jewish faith, or Saudi Arabia weaponizing Sunni Islam? But whether it's freedom of the press, freedom of speech, or freedom of religion, is there any single thing that has made the West cast off the thin veneer of their supposed values and show their true authoritarian colors like Russia? A decision was made following the US-backed Maidan Putsch in 2014 that in order to permanently geopolitically divide Ukraine from Russia, that the cultural and religious bonds uniting the two peoples must be severed as well. The creation of a new Orthodox Church of Ukraine, OCU, with a new patriarch in Kiev was pushed by the Kiev Putsch regime and manufactured into being in 2018. The Kiev patriarch Filaret even gave CIA ops chief Jack Devine an award for his support in the creation of the new ecclesiastically independent Ukrainian Orthodox Church. Incidentally, he gave an award to US neocon John McCain as well. That should tell you everything you need to know. Since seizing power in 2014 and accelerating dramatically in the last year, the US-backed Putsch regime in Kiev has been carrying out a very real pogrom against the Orthodox churches and parishioners across Ukraine who do not accept the rule and strictures of its newly manufactured Orthodox Church of Ukraine. This after the older and still largest Ukrainian Orthodox Church, UOC, officially suspended its nominal ecclesiastical ties with the Orthodox Patriarch in Moscow after the start of the Russian intervention in the Ukrainian civil conflict in February 2014. They even made very public statements against the Russian intervention,
Ukraine's Orthodox Church administratively is absolutely independent from the Russian Orthodox Church, and this is determined by the charter that we have adopted yesterday. Metropolitan Onufry made a statement in which he was urging the representative of the Russian Orthodox Church to do everything within its power to stop military aggression of Russia against Ukraine,
including a procession by its priests against the Russian and Donbass siege of the then neo-Nazi Azov-held Azovstal steel plant in Mariupol. But that isn't good enough for the Zelensky regime in Kiev. The Ukrainian Orthodox Church, its priests and its petitioners are still regarded with hostility and decried as fifth columnists that need to be cleansed from Ukraine. It's believed that whatever they may proclaim, deep inside they do not hold absolute loyalty to the US-backed putsch regime in Kiev and don't truly hate Russia and Russians enough.
This monastery comes under the Moscow Patriarch, which from the start has been destroying Ukraine from the inside. Therefore, we see all these monks as Russian agents, so there's a very high chance they've been hiding collaborators.
Zelensky has given an address.
Сьогодні відбулось засідання РНБО. Засідання, на якому ми розглянули численні факти зв'язків окремих релігійних кіл в Україні з державою-агресором. На жаль, навіть російський терор і повномасштабна війна не переконали деяких діячів в тому, що варто подолати спокусу зла. Що ж, маємо створити такі умови, коли будь-які залежні від держави-агресора діячі не матимуть жодної можливості маніпулювати українцями і послаблювати Україну зсередини. Отже, перше, РНБО доручила уряду внести на розгляд Верховної Ради законопроект щодо унеможливлення діяльності в Україні афільованих із центрами впливу в Російській Федерації релігійних організацій. Друге, Державній службі з етнополітики та свободи совісті забезпечити проведення релігієзнавчої експертизи статуту про управління УПЦ на наявність церковно-канонічного зв'язку з Московським патріархатом за необхідності вжити передбаченим законом заходів.
Declaring the regime's crackdown on the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, its parishes, priests, and parishioners, and drafted legislation to ban and outlaw the Orthodox Christian Church completely, ominously intoning, "We will never allow anyone to build an empire inside the Ukrainian soul." Because the regime apparently is now dictating even what happens in Ukrainians' souls. The regime's neo-Nazi and Banderite fascist battalions have been terrorizing and storming churches of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, UOC. Just from February to August, over 250 churches across the country were violently seized and turned over to the new Kiev regime-loyal Orthodox Church of Ukraine. The Kiev Putsch regime's intelligence services, the SBU, have also launched inquisition-like raids at monasteries and churches across the country under the guise of counterintelligence measures to hunt for and root out collaborators and traitors of the Ukrainian people, searching for such damning evidence as prayer books or religious literature still in the Russian language, or icons of Russian saints that prove they are acting as subversive cells of the Russian world. Priests have been physically dragged out of their churches, imprisoned for their heretical views, and sometimes, as in the case of Father Sergei Tarasov of Kiev, even killed in cold blood.
Я захищаю Українську православну церкву. Я прослужив 21 рік. Цих людей хрестив, хоронив, родичів близьких, вінчав. Разом з ними гостилися, і він кровом був разом з ними. І зараз ви бачите, що зі мною зробили. Причина в тому, що релігійна ворожнеча між людьми сталася. Тому що закони неправильно прийняті державою, вони створили не тільки війну на Сході, а вони в селах роблять теж.
Избивали битой по рукам, по ногам, потом били по голове, по шее боксерскими такими ударами. У меня на голове была шапка натянута плотно, вот, чтобы я ничего не видел. Потом шокером били. Сел сверху такой крупный боец, зажал меня ногами с обоих сторон. И, собственно, начали, тряпку на лицо положили, начали поливать водой. Вот, и вот эта вот пытка водой называется. Во время этой пытки легкими человек заглатывает воду, а пищевод идет в воздух. Наоборот все происходит.
Убой были несколько дней. Вот что принуждали. Ну, первый призыв, чтобы я призывал к расколу в церкви, призыв осудить патриарха Кирилла. Вот, естественно, всех призывать на войну против России, вот, заключенных. Мерзко это, ну, нельзя сказать, то есть даже зэки живут 1000 раз лучше, там, уголовники, чем политические заключенные. Ну, как говорил там опер на этой части, который говорит, мне дана команда убивать вас. У них есть, вот, если кто помнит, такой есть, как вот рубель, вот как белье гладить, вот всегда такая вот. Вот они его сделали, этот рубель, большая такая ручка, они обмотали, ну, чтобы тряпкой, вафельным полотенцем, и бьют ним этим вот этой вот штукой. Есть у них другая, то есть металлическая каска, то есть они одевают металлическую каску, ну и тоже по этой каске бьют палками. Есть они и электрические пытки применяют.
Parishioners, as well, have been harassed, beaten, and dragged out of their churches, often in the middle of Mass. Western media and governments mostly ignore and pretend all this isn't happening, or on the rare occasions when they acknowledge the pogroms and inquisitions being carried out, speak of them in quietly approving framing and tones, all the while obscenely whitewashing the Zelenskiy regime in Kiev as some kind of paragon of democracy, freedom, and liberalism. Freedom of religion? What's that? Ethnic Russians and their spiritual and political sympathizers are subhuman and must be excised from Ukraine, one way or the other. Currently, some 12,000 parishes in Ukraine, the majority, are still held by the besieged Ukrainian Orthodox Church. The most recent polls show that despite all this pressure from the regime, its Banderite battalions and ultranationalist mobs...
Чого ви йдете? Що ви настояти?
А хто ви? Хто ви? Чого? Священник? Якої?
Ви мене не штовхаєте. Чого ви мене впихуєте? Українське православ'я. Дозвольте. Ні, не дозволяємо. Громада не дозволяє. Чого ви мене толкаєте?
That nearly 20% of Ukrainian Orthodox believers still hold openly to the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, and another 34% avoid declaration of their specific domination, only willing to identify themselves as Orthodox believers. If the Zelenskiy regime remains in power at the end of the conflict, it is almost certain that the pogrom against the Ukrainian Orthodox Church and all those believers who refuse to convert will reach its grim and logical conclusion.
He is a dictator. He is a dangerous authoritarian who has used $100 billion in U.S. tax dollars to erect a one-party police state in Ukraine. And that's not an overstatement. Over the past year, Zelensky has banned opposition parties. He shut down critical media by force. He's arrested his political opponents. He has sent soldiers into churches. Zelensky's secret police have raided monasteries across Ukraine, even a convent full of nuns, and arrested dozens of priests for no justifiable reason whatsoever and in clear violation of the Ukrainian constitution, which no longer matters. And in the face of this, the Biden administration has said nothing, not one word. Instead, they just continued to push to send Zelensky more tax dollars. So naturally, Zelensky has become much bolder. Why wouldn't he? Last week, he announced his plan to ban an entire religion, the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, and to seize its property, all for being insufficiently loyal to his regime. And he said it out loud. Watch this.
We have to create such conditions when any people dependent on the country aggressor won't be able to manipulate Ukrainians and weaken Ukraine from within. First, the National Security and Defense Council instructed the government to submit to the Verkhovna Rada, a draft law on making it impossible for religious organizations affiliated with centers of influence in the Russian Federation to operate in Ukraine.
A free country does not ban a major religion just because it's not fully on board with the political program of the people running the country. But Zelensky's doing that, and his cabinet is now devising ways to punish Christians for practicing their banned ancient religion in Ukraine. Quote, personal, economic, and restrictive sanctions will be applied to any Christian caught worshiping in unapproved ways. Now, the Ukrainian Orthodox Church is more than 1,000 years old. With the full backing of the Joe Biden administration and the U.S. Congress, Zelensky has decided to ban it. So here's the response of one bishop to the news. You're not allowed to send soldiers into churches. You're not allowed to arrest dozens of priests because they refuse to bow before you. You're not allowed to ban whole religions. So most of the U.S. media, most, have just ignored this. Some have made excuses for it. Oh, he has to do this because there's a war. But there's no justification for this whatsoever. The Ukrainian Orthodox Church is not Russian, it's Ukrainian. It has no connection to the Putin government. It has, in fact, officially denounced the Russian invasion of Ukraine. So once again, there is no justification for destroying and banning this church.
І як прийшла до нього, рідна мати його, плаче, ридає, жалує його. Як прийшла до нього, рідна мати його, плаче, ридає, жалує його. Ой, сину ж мій сину, уже навоювався, без правої ручки, без ніжки зостався. Ой, сину ж мій сину, вже навоювався, без правої ручки, без ніжки зостався. Мами ж наші